it's Karen Burniston here with my monthly designer challenge video. The theme this month is What's Cookin', and I challenge the team to use our oven pop-up die. This die set creates an oven that opens plus one single bank of cabinets on each side. But what I'm going to do for my card today is expand the cabinetry to make a bigger kitchen that will fit in a 5x7 card. The theme of my card is Christmas. Celebrate the sweet season, making some Christmas cookies. However, you could certainly take this technique and decorate that kitchen for any time of year. The three main dies that I used are the oven pop-up, the oven extras, and rectangles and labels crosshatch. And then sort of the second tier dies that I used would be Fireplace Extras 1 and Fireplace Extras 2. And that's because I chose a Christmas theme, so I wanted some holiday elements, and then I wanted some items to put on my open shelving. And then for the folks that collect our word sets, I did want to show how easy it is to make your own custom greetings by mixing and matching between the sets. So in this case, celebrate the sweet season, easy to substitute something else. Okay, I am going to start with the tile backsplash from the Oven Extras die set. So I wanted an impressive back wall for my open shelving. So what I'm doing is using a piece of medium gray cardstock, and the first thing I'm going to do is emboss that die. So all of your major die cutting machines include pieces either with the machine or as a separate purchase to be able to let you emboss a wafer thin die. I am using a Spellbinders Platinum 6, and those pieces come included with the machine. Now I need to set the die back in the grooves, set my machine up for a regular cutting sandwich, and run it back through to cut it. So it really does make a cool effect when you do the emboss and cut on that backsplash die. You can also use it as a stencil. So now I'm going to put the piece back in the die again and pounce some white ink through the die as a stencil. So this gives me the exact look I wanted, which was the darker grout with the lighter tile. But to do so, I had to use pigment ink. That white ink is pigment, and that takes a long time to dry. So I'm going to use some clear embossing powder over the piece to both set the ink, but then also make all of my tiles shiny. So I'm just using a clear embossing powder, dump that over the piece, and then I need a heat gun to heat it up and melt it. Okay, so that gives me that very cool piece. It's about 4 1/8 inches long, the piece that comes in the set. Now I'm trying to lengthen this out to a 5x7 card, so I'm going to need 4 of these total. So I just need to repeat that process. I do recommend that you clean the ink off the die in between cuts so that you don't end up with white ink all over your cutting pads. And for that, I just use a rag, squirt it with some water, and dry the die, so you don't need any chemicals. Okay, to lengthen each of these so that they'll fit my 5x7 card, I'm going to glue one over the top, but then I just want to get rid of the excess grout line so that it really does become seamless. So I'm going to take my scissors and just trim away the grout that's next to the 2 half tiles. And then when I glue that to the other one, it will really disguise the seam. My favorite glue is LINECO Neutral pH Adhesive in my fine tip bottle. So we do sell both of those items on our website. After repeating that process, I'm going to take my 2 extended strips and cut them to 6 1/4 inches long. All right, now I'm going to think ahead because I know that I want to put a little box platform behind my mixer. Now those box platforms come included with the Oven Extras set. It will cut 3 at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out where one's going to go, probably where that seam is. And I've also cut a little 1/4 inch silver glitter accent strip to go between my 2 tile pieces. So on the box platform, there are 4 folds. I'm going to stick my thumbnail in the folds and work them so that I can make a little box out of that piece. And I just use my glue on the tapered tab to glue it together. So then once it sets up, I've got myself a little box platform. Now I know that it's going to be very difficult to get that box platform to glue to those shiny embossed tiles. But if I remove a piece of the backsplash right in the area where I plan to eventually add that box, then I can glue the box to the wall. So one thing I'm doing is I'm going up 2 tiles from the bottom, and that way a little bit of the backsplash will be below the counter height. So that looks to be about perfect. I am making a top fold 5x7 card. So I started with a piece of cardstock, 7 inches wide by 10 inches tall, scored in the center at 5 inches. And then to that, I added 2 pieces of pattern paper, one for my wall, one for my floor, Each of those is 4 3/4 on the height, 6 3/4 on the width. Okay, now I'm going to start die cutting pieces out of my oven pop-up die set. So I'm going to cut 2 of the oven base pieces out of white cardstock and then 1 of the cabinet piece. I'm going to mark the center of the card on the fold at 3.5 inches, and then I'm also going to mark 1.5 inches from the right-hand side. What those pencil lines are going to do is to help me place the base pieces so that I can get the overall kitchen centered in the card. So now I'm going to work the folds in the base pieces, and each one of the folds is going to fold away from me like a mountain fold. You can use just a medium weight cardstock for this. Smooth is the best because you can really see where the fold lines are. This does not have to be heavyweight cardstock. For my second base, I'm really just going to use the right side of the platform. Let me fix that fold that I got crooked. So out here on the right, I'm going to work both the folds. But then instead of continuing on to work the folds for the center and the left-hand piece, I really don't need them. So I'm just going to cut those parts away so that I basically have a partial base that's enough to suspend my cabinetry out on the right-hand side. And then for the single cabinet, there's a die for that. So I've just cut that and worked the fold. I recommend glue for adding the base into the card. So I'm going to add my glue all over the back tab. So that's the long rectangular tab. And then that is going to attach on the wall side of the fold. So if you lift up the floor a little bit, it can be easy to make sure that the end of the tab comes right up to the fold line but doesn't cross it. And then for horizontal placement, I have the edge of the tab right on my first pencil line. So that way I've got the oven base in. And then this other base, again, I'm just going to use the rectangular tab as my piece that goes on the wall side of the fold. And the right side of that tab is right on my second pencil line. So I'm just lifting up the floor to make sure that I don't cross the fold. So with those straight rectangular tabs, they glue on the wall side of the fold. And now I'm going to find the flat position for both of these bases. So the flat position is when both the upper tabs are folded forward. So I'm basically folding on the second fold line for each one. And the triple, I want to make sure that all those folds are straight, that each one of those things is sitting side by side. I can always kind of move the fold a little bit if I folded a little crooked. Now I add my glue to the tapered tabs on each of the 4 sections. So it's only those outer tapered tabs that get the adhesive. And then what I want to do is hold everything nice and flat on the wall side of the card while I close the floor against the exposed adhesive. And that way I'm attaching those tabs in the flat position and I know it will fold flat. Okay, once I think all 4 tabs have set up, I'm going to carefully open the card. It's going to try and pull the tabs up, so I want to go really slowly with this. And then once I get it where all 4 tabs are attached, then I can open it up and give them a good press in the open position as well. Okay, I chose to make my base color white because my cabinets are white, and that way the toe kick at the base of the cabinets will match the cabinets. But right now the interior of the oven is white and wallpaper, so I'm going to change that into silver. I've cut a piece of silver cardstock, 2 inches wide by 2 5/8 inches tall, and I've scored it at 1.5 inches from the top. So all I need to do then is just fold on the fold line, and then I'm going to have a piece that can sit on top of that base and change the area inside the oven to the silver color. Once again, I have a type of cardstock that is going to be difficult to hold the little box platform because of how shiny the silver cardstock is. So instead of using the box platform, I'm going to cheat and just make it on the card fold. So all I'm going to do is take my scissors and make 2 parallel cuts, just up a little bit, as far as maybe that box platform would sit. Then I grab and fold it over the top and give it a good pinch. Put it back where I started, and then pop it to come into the card. So basically just making my own simple box platform to hold my oven rack, and then I'm going to just glue that inside the card. So just avoiding the box platform area with my glue, then I just get it sitted down into that fold between the base and the wall and glue it inside the card. So just a little cheat code for when you're using those metallic and shiny cardstocks. Okay, once I have that piece in for the inside of the oven, that will set the location for my first row of tile backsplash, and that's the one that has the little cutout for it. So I just glue that so that it's butted right up to that piece that I glued in that's the interior of the oven. Then I add my decorative strip of the silver glitter cardstock and then my second row of tiles above that. Now, the reason I made that pop-up inside the oven is because I want to do a double oven rack. So the oven rack die comes included with the base oven die set, but right now I need to trim out the piece in the back that would be where the pop-up is, and that way I can just weave the rack around it and glue it down. Now, one thing I like to do with the upper rack, it is completely optional because it'll work just fine to just glue it right on there, is I like to make it a little bit shallower. So the way I do that is I just trim up the middle of the back section, then I add glue to the spikes and glue that piece back on again. And that way it just makes it less wide and gives it a little bit more structure to attach to the pop-up. Okay, so now I have my double oven rack. That is absolutely optional. If you wanted to simplify this card, you could not do the little extra box platform right there and instead just have a single rack on the bottom of the oven that you would place a tray of cookies on. Both the cookie sheet die and the two types of cookies, those dies are included in the oven pop-up die set. I like to use score tape on the back of the cardstock when I'm making cookies. That way they are stickers that I can just pick up and move to the cookie sheet. And then my sheet of cookies glues inside the oven. All right, turning to the oven. For the oven handle itself, if you find it difficult to see the score lines after you've die cut, just use a second piece of cardstock behind the one you want to use. And that way it will add extra pressure and it will press the cardstock down between the two fold lines. And that makes it really easy to figure out where you're supposed to fold that oven handle. And the two folds basically make a zigzag out on the end of the handle on both sides. Now, I've got shiny metallic cardstock that I've used to cut the oven, and once again, I'm a little worried about the glue being strong enough for me to be able to pull that oven handle to open the door. So I'm taking a pokey tool and just scratching up the surface of that metallic cardstock really well so that hopefully the glue will stick down to that scratched surface and hold permanently, and I won't have to worry about the oven handle coming off. So it's just the ends of the oven handle that glue across the door of the oven, just end to end, and then just press those down really well and give it a second to set up. Okay, so now I've got the oven handle on. I'm going to go ahead and work that fold at the base of the oven door so that it is folding outward. And then I can kind of just check and see that the oven handle is staying on. I cut a second oven door, isolated just the door area, and now I'm just adding a transparency over the opening. Then I'm going to switch to a thin tape because I think it works better with a transparency, and then attach that extra oven door that has the transparency in it to the back of the oven door so that I basically have the window glass trapped between the two layers. Now, if you wanted frosted glass, you would just use vellum instead of a transparency. So here's a trick to get good spacing on the 4 burner knobs. You can actually use the die that cuts the knobs as a stencil. So I'm just laying that down and then using a pen to mark through the 4 knobs. And that way when I glue my knobs on later, I can just cover up each one of those pen lines. The stencil feature on that die is a great way to add the detail to the knobs. So I used black mirror cardstock with double-sided adhesive score tape on the back before die cutting. That way my knobs are stickers. And then for the stenciling, I used a white paint pen. Then I just pick up each one and add it to the stove, covering up the pen marks that I made for spacing. I used gray cardstock for the solid circles and then black mirror card for the burner overlays, layered them together and added them to the top of the stove. For the left side, I can just use the single cabinet that comes included in the piece. But for the right side, I wanted to extend it out across the card. So for that, I need to cut my own piece. This piece is 3 inches wide by 2 7/8 inches tall, and it's scored at 1 inch from the top. So that is going to be the wide base of cabinets that will go on the right side of the oven. But I don't have a continuous toe kick at this point, so I need to add one. So I've cut a piece of white cardstock, 2 7/8 inches wide by 3/8 of an inch tall, and that is going to fit between those bases to extend the toe kick. Now these extra pieces are only necessary because I am widening the kitchen. The base oven pop-up die set comes with drawer fronts for the base cabinets, but the oven extras comes with a cabinet door for the uppers, and that is sized to fit the lowers as well. So I can make a mixture of drawers and doors on my base cabinets. And I used red mirror cardstock for the knobs. Now I could use a big coarse sponge like I did in the assembly video for the oven set to texturize the countertops, but I wanted to try something different. I started hunting through all of my big background stamps, and I found this wonderful texture. Now, this is an old stamp, Fred Mullet, 20 years ago probably. You'll have to look on eBay. But I found this great texture stamp, and you could substitute something different and use that to stamp that texture on white cardstock using some gray ink. And then I'm just going to use my trimmer to cut a piece that is 1 1/8 inches on the width by 3 1/8 inches on the length. And that will be my long countertop. For the short counter, I just use the square die that comes in the oven pop-up set. I just wanted to show that idea because I know a lot of us collect things like background stamps, so there might be some good textures in your collection. Of course, you could just use a sponge or some patterned paper if you didn't have access to a big background stamp. The oven is going to attach at the base here and then to the back wall. But then I don't want to guess where it goes. I want to do that in the flat position. So turning the oven over, I need to fold it down so that it's basically zigzag fold and that the knob section is folded against the burner section. And then I'm going to add my adhesive all over the base of the oven at the bottom, and then all over the back of the knob panel. So those are the two sections of the oven that are going to attach to the card. And then what I want to do is just line it up where it's butted right up to that center section. And then I'm going to keep everything nice and flat. So I've got to fold down that gluey panel on the back of the knobs and then close it to attach both sections at the same time. I like to go slow as I open it to make sure that everything attached, and just, I can even kind of give it a press in the open position too to just make sure that it's really attached to the card. Next, I'll attach the base cabinets. So the way these attach is using those little wing tabs on the side of the stove. I'm going to use some small glue dots on that little wing out on the left side rather than glue, just because it's such shiny cardstock. And then the fold that's in the base cabinet just butts right up to the edge of that tab. And I just make sure that it's nice and straight. And then that'll bring the base of the cabinet to the toe kick. And so if I lift that up, I can add a line of glue at the top portion of the toe kick. And then what I like to do is just get the card to 90 degrees and just kind of press the base cabinet down into that toe kick glue. And I find that that works fine. I don't have to do this all in the closed position, but once it starts to set up, I do want to close the card and make sure that it folds flat. Now I repeat that exact same process on the other side. So some strong glue dots to my little wing tab, get the fold of the base cabinet right up into that corner of the tab. Then I lift up the cabinets, add a strong glue along the top edge of my toe kick, get the card to 90 degrees, and then press the cabinets into that glue. Once I think the glue has set up enough, then I can carefully close the card. Okay, this kitchen is really coming together. Now it's time to add those custom countertops. So I want my glue on top of the pop-up since the countertops are a little bit larger. And then I just place those pieces down into the glue to attach them. I hope that in another universe I'm a kitchen designer because I just really love it, at least these little paper kitchens. Okay, I know exactly where to put that little box pop-up because I made that cutout for it. So I just need some glue down into that cutout opening and to the base of the box, and then just get in there and glue that into the fold so that it is attached both to the back wall and to the countertop. The Oven Extras set includes a range hood, and I'm going to attach that to the back wall using foam tape. I think a red mirror card mixer is perfect for my holiday kitchen. A little adhesive to the front of the box platform, and then I just attach that mixer to it. I found some wood grain paper in my stash, and I die cut the cookie sheet. Now I'm going to slide the cookie sheet down a little bit so that I can turn that into a square cutting board. And I'm going to use temporary removable tape to hold the die in place. And then with my cutting pad, I want to cover just the edge that I need to cut, so not the entire die. And then that will leave me with a square version of that cookie sheet that looks more like a cutting board. Now I need flour on the board so that the cookie dough won't stick, so I'm going to pounce some white ink onto it using a paper towel. For the rolled out cookie dough, I just need to trim around the cookies that I cut earlier that have that double-sided adhesive on the back. And I'm just kind of cutting into a little blob that includes 4 of the cookies. Then I peel up the liner and stick that to my board. And then it'll look like I've rolled out the cookie dough, and then I'll just remove a couple of the cookies so that it looks like those are in progress moving to the cookie sheet. For a plate of cookies, I used a circle die. This one happens to be from our surprise ball pop-up, but any kind of small circle die that you can emboss and then flip over. Now this plate of cookies is going to be already decorated. So for the gingerbread man, I just used a white pen to add the eyes, the buttons, the smile, and the little icing across the arms and legs. So then I just glued all of those elements to the countertops. I didn't want to cover up too much of that cool backsplash, so instead I'm doing open shelving, and I just cut with my trimmer some pieces of that same wood grain paper that I found in my stash, added foam tape behind it, and attached it to the back wall just above my accent strip to be my open shelving. Fireplace Extras 1 and Fireplace Extras 2 were perfect to find the small pieces I need for my open shelving. So the first thing I'm doing is taking the vase die. I cut it twice out of white, twice out of red, and then snipped through the middle to make bowls. So I made 2 little stacks of bowls, the red and the white ones, to go on my shelves. And then I also made a little framed Santa's face. So the Santa's face itself, I just found it on a scrap of pattern paper and just used the little die out of the Fireplace Extras 2 to cut it out, and then added the frame over the top. The pot comes out of the Oven Extras, so that's going to go on the shelf as well. And then I combined pieces out of both of the Fireplace Extras sets to make a holiday wreath, and I'm going to glue that to my range hood. I had also thought a houseplant might look really nice on the shelf, so you could get those pieces out of Fireplace Extras too. Adding a photo in the frame would be a great way to personalize the kitchen. There is an oven mitt in the oven pop-up set, and that looks great hanging off of the oven handle. I don't have much open wall left, but if I score a couple pieces of cardstock, I can use those pieces as baseboards. To finish things out, I'm going to start with a strip of white cardstock, and that will give me a place that I can sign the card. And then I'm going to add the label frame, the crosshatch label, and then words out of those 4 different word sets to create a custom greeting, celebrate the sweet season. With pop-up cards, I always save the card front to last, and that way I can just use my leftover materials to make a simple lead-in. So in this case, just the same rectangles and labels set, another one of those red mixers, and some greenery out of Fireplace Extras 1 to create a simple lead-in that has a nod to the magic inside. And then I just glued my finished card front to the front of the card. If I wanted to mail this card, I would just use an A7 envelope since it is a standard 5x7 card. Now, if I were going to mail this card, I probably would leave the oven door just a little bit ajar, and that way the recipient would know that it opens. With designer challenge videos, I'm always trying to incorporate some kind of amped up technique. So in this case, widening the kitchen, but it does work wonderfully, of course, as just the standard kitchen as the die was designed with that single bank of cabinets on either side. You can find more oven inspiration on the blog post for this month's challenge. You will find the link in the description box below. On the blog post, you will find photographs of my card, as well as links and photos of all of the wonderful oven inspiration by our talented design team. Thanks for watching. If you click on the website link, you'll go to KarenBurniston.com, where you can purchase these dies as well as find links to our other social media accounts. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel and check out some of my other videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.